the aesthetic one. And so that, in other words, the absorption in beauty. And that, of course, in a way seems it is, of course, an extremely attractive one. But again, that's not meant, never forget that, these things are not meant in any kind of sentimental way. They are meant in the way of mastery. In other words, there are many different ways to enjoy beauty, to like beauty, but to focus on beauty and to absorb beauty, that's a very different matter. And so, still that is precisely what you try to do in that whole course of meditation, in the four stages of meditation, which you all know. That is concentration, contemplation, meditation, and realization. There again, you have another of these categories which play a role in Sufism. And so, that is that idea of focusing on beauty is very essential. Now, there are very different ways of focusing on beauty. For instance, in one of the great chapters in the Unity of Religious Ideals, the final chapter of the first part of the Unity, there you find that first, after having mastered the psychological aspect of prayer, which discusses why these different categories of prayer, one needs to adore, one's need for adoration of something which one feels to be higher than oneself, of what would be lifted out of one's sense of inadequacy, and of course in provision of one's needs. After those psychological categories of prayer, what does Bush say? What's the further stage of what he calls prayer? That is the awareness of divine presence in the beauty of nature. And this in itself is quite a remarkable concept, of course, because on the one hand, as we know nature, there's quite a bit of violence and quite a bit, of rivalry with trees and animals and whatever. There's quite a lot of trouble, to say nothing of all the mud and the problems which you get in nature. And nonetheless, all of us, when we go on holiday, there was nothing we like better than going to nature, isn't it? There's nothing more which idealize of the possibility of going out and enjoy nature. So, exactly. So that is it. These two aspects. Yes, exactly. These two aspects are there. And the wonderful thing is that you rise above all the division and dirt and threats and problems which nature also involves to enjoy its beauty. You go into here, the seaside, you go into the woodlands, you go into the dunes, you go into the mountains, and there nature is full of that kind of life serenity, which in Moshe gives also a wonderful depiction of, again in the Rose Garden, you find that chapter, Silent Life, where Moshe describes the communion of the soul of the human being with the surrounding serenity of nature. And Moshe again speaks of his own experience, because as a very young man he was in Nepal, later on also in Europe, and beauty sports, he always had that sense of upliftment which the beauty of nature can give. But then in addition to nature, there was so much beauty, for instance, in art. Of course, that's precisely in art, but also in science. Moshe also emphasizes that even science ultimately is not a process started in the intellect, but in intuition. Why do you choose a particular subject, a particular theme, a particular line of studies? There's something in yourself which draws you to it. That's why you choose it. That element of personal taste, that subjective taste, which later leads you to your intellect and an objective discipline, but still starts in that intuitive personal taste. So for Moshe, that is again the heart, and ultimately therefore the soul, which feeds the heart, which determines that which you achieve even in the form of intellect. And as you know, many mathematicians and great experts will speak of the beauty of mathematics. I've never been able to understand the slightest mathematics, and often tell me But anyway, great mathematicians will emphasize the beauty of mathematics, the beauty of physics, the beauty of all these kind of material things in which you have become expert. And then, of course, speaking of art, and that there become, of course, the most particular specialism. How art proceeds from the visual arts to the conceptual arts, like literature and poetry and everything which even goes beyond the depicting, the pictorial arts, which themselves you can focus on. Then you get intellectual arts, let us say, and ultimately you get what for Motion is the greatest of all arts, is of course music. And music in many different ways, Motion emphasizes that it is precisely the tone of music, the sound, the tone, the beauty of music, because it is no longer bound to any kind of form, which, you know, completes that kind of sense of aesthetic focus, that the experience of beauty, which is so much focused, so one is so much lifted into that contemplation of beauty, that it leads one very easily into the experience of meditation. Once you have been able to absorb beauty, then the absorption in meditation is very near and very easy. Now, for Hazrat, as I said, it was above all music, but you could say that every art in which you are able to absorb, or every art which absorbs you, can have that same effect. Sometimes it is said that the Dutch, here in Holland, are very specialized in the pictorial arts, in particular in painting. And that even observing a painting which you enjoy as of great beauty may have that same effect. There is a story of a French, fairly recent, well-known French writer, became one of the great French authors, of whom it is said he used to come to Holland every year and stay at The Hague, and in the Mauritshuis you would go and look at the Gezicht of Delft, the famous picture of Delft there. And he would sit there, just contemplate this picture, and then again, after having finished his business in Holland, he would then return to France, but that was an annual thing which he strove forever to return to the contemplation of this picture. That's contemplative power. That's really contemplative. So even from any art which really appeals you so much that it fully takes you in, or you are fully taken in by it, will result in that particular atmosphere, and which again enables very easily, as I said, we have the disciplinary aspect of the practices, the kind of yoga method, then we have the ethical methods, and then you had that aspect through beauty. And that's, in a sense, the most immediate one, the most direct one, and of course, in many ways, the most enjoyable one. So